So I finished a map of days, and there's progress writing wise. Um, I don't want to be that type of person and, celebrate when Jacob and Emma broke up, especially since I hate how gushy Jacob is about his feelings with Emma, but it was bound to happen. So when it did, and I was like, yeah, I kind of saw it coming. So, and then basically the most of the book consisted. Okay, let me go ahead. You know that thing you go through when you're in Skyrim and you start off on the Thieves Guild, or you join the Companions and you start off with some errands and then you do a real mission? It's basically like that. They literally deliver packages. One of them is dog treats at you know, a motel. And then another one is fudging, I don't know. They just Jacob gave a package to a random a group of people in a loop in Georgia. Literally just a town called Portal, Georgia. I gotta look that up to see if it's a real place. Because now I'm genuinely curious about the layout of America's towns. Apparently, if you curiously enough, if you look up September 3rd, 1940, you actually find out that there was a kickoff World War II incident right by Wales. So, ooh. So yeah, that's yeah. Ransom Riggs does like to keep things pretty accurate, especially with these cool little photos he puts into these books. But moving on from that, let's see. I'm I'm probably gonna keep talking about this, and then I'm gonna go ahead and get into my basic review of the book. Then after that, they find out that they have to go and rescue someone all the way over in Brooklyn, or is it Manhattan? Who cares? It's New York. Which means that not only has Jacob been driving for hours away from his little tiny island that he lives on in Florida, but he's also been driving from that place to Georgia, but also been driving all the way up to different time eras. Also, apparently, they had to go to the 60s, which they also had a little black boy helping them out to, find his way over to Portal. And apparently, the 1960s, if you remember it correctly, history book wise, is really not a fun time to be a black person. Hands down. And basically, a whole chapter pretty much got into this whole thing about. It was it did cover a lot of things about like who was trying to own America, like uh, mostly like uh, it, like I don't know. It kind of felt weird reading that. Like I know Ransom Riggs likes covering stuff, through a perspective, like peculiar stuff. Like, hey, let's make this slightly political. Because I know last time I was talking about a map of days, it was like kind of like a coming out of the closet story when your parents are assholes. And this one, it was kind of like through a liberal lens perspective of how history went. And let me go ahead and say this. And you're probably going to be looking it up on a bunch of on my brother's channel and maybe a bunch of other sources and whatnot. I don't want to get into it too deeply, but it did seem pretty unbiased, the chapter itself at least. So I can slack off on my rant with Ransom Riggs. That much I can say. And hey, Native Americans were pretty chill with people with peculiarities. Didn't mention anything about black people. Didn't say anything about whites. And apparently, of course, there are no imbrines because apparently people are scared shitless of peculiars, so they pretty much went out and stamped out imbrines to extinction in America. So now that we only have, timekeepers and demi-imbrines to kind of keep the loops looping, every 24 hours so that people can, chill there. And, after they deliver the package and move on to New York, they find out that there is a peculiar kid who has an interesting ability, something that I don't know has actually been exposed before in Marvel comics, like the X-Men, because I know X-Men does stuff with, like mutations and whatnot. But this girl can actually extract light, put it into her body, and absorb it a part of her, and then, lash it out like a weapon. And, when she takes in the light and puts it in her body, the light's gone. It's all darkness from there. And apparently, it's supposed to be a super unique type of peculiarity too, which I will go into much later down the book. So apparently she did do some school-related incidents, messed up with the assembly, got cornered in the bathroom, and bailed it. So using her peculiarity to pretty much, overblow the light in the light sockets in the assembly hall and sucked out the light and just ran towards the bathroom. Got cornered by some quote-unquote faculty members, which probably weren't faculty members. And basically just kind of blew up on them with her light ability. Kind of literally blew up on them and just ran out of there. And so far, as far as I know, hadn't been seen in public since. And basically, there's some funny incidences where the kids are trying to figure out how to find her by blending in with school. One of them has Bronwyn, talking to some kids over at the PE fields, and Enoch just gets bored because no one wants to talk to him, so he goes to the science lab and raises a bunch of cats from the grave and scares a bunch of kids with them. That's so him and so funny. I actually was kind of laughing at that one. See, Enoch is starting to warm up on me in this book because he's in the last few books, I used to think, oh my god, he's such an annoying little asshat. But in this one, he's actually starting to warm up on me. He's actually kind of funny. I don't know if it's because of the way I matured, but it's sort of like this kind of like troll logic he has, where it's like, I would probably do that if I was playing a video game, but I know I wouldn't in real life type situation. And Jacob and Emma were trying to chill out with a couple of kids um, at a breakfast table, in the cafeteria, and they pretty much told them, what they figured happened during the assembly until faculty members got involved and told them to come with them, and then they tried to escape, and then of course Enoch came in with the zombie cats. And then Millard, whose initial plan was to go and scroll through some files and paperwork to find out anything about a student who had been going through some through some counseling, or maybe getting into trouble lately, maybe getting into some maybe fights over her different over being different. Guess what Millard does? He flirts with a girl that happens to be this Peculiar's friend. But the girl that he hits on happens to be partially blind. Partially because she knows she's talking to an invisible person. But she also doesn't care. And she also can't see very well. And I'm just like, you know what? I love Millard, but I also really do love the idea of him getting a girlfriend, so I bless this upon you. But no, seriously, seeing him, flirt with a girl, and, that girl actually reciprocating his feelings, it was the cutest thing. Oh my god. So they go ahead and, get the girl, Lily, to trust them enough to lead them over to this, not exactly a warehouse, but more like I don't know what to tell you because I'm not familiar with it, but you see it all the time in movies and TV shows where there's maybe sometime a long time ago in the past, someone decided to put some money into an apartment building, but the money just wasn't enough to complete the project. So instead, they have a shell of an apartment of what was supposed to be, or even a business. We don't have that here, actually, in Arizona. We don't. We actually handle our money really well. I'm kidding. I'm pretty sure New Yorkers know what they're doing. What am I talking about? You guys. I have a few people that subscribe to me, and I got other people that watch my videos. Who cares? No one watches my videos. I'm gonna say whatever the hell I want. You guys sick. But no. And they managed to find a girl whose name is Noor Padresh. And apparently they start explaining to them, everything about peculiarities, peculiardom, all that stuff. And, well, the Europe version of it, the American version of peculiardom is a little wild, okay? It's basically kind of like the mafia, actually. But it's how it runs. But anyway, they managed to finally get her to trust them enough to, get her somewhere else. And see, the thing is that they were supposed to take her to a loop on an island under a bridge, which I'm sure there is a postcard that apparently Jacob's father sent him, and apparently that's where the address was on. It was more like a zip code than an address. But yeah. And she's like, after a lot of like, pestering and whatnot, well, less like pestering and more like trying to get her trust, they finally, she finally was like, okay, sure. Then a helicopter came in, and a couple of like SWAT team looking guys came in, and they had to get the hell out of there. Unfortunately, Bronwyn, who may have killed one of the guys that were shooting a gun at them, may have gotten darted in the stomach by a tranquilizer and passed out on the train on the way to whatever location they were planning on going to. See, Jacob was like, we could take Noor, or is it Noor? I am so bad at names. Noor. I'm so sorry. I'm better at these names. I promise. But anyway, I he decides, why don't we go ahead and take her to our loop instead of you know the loop we don't know anything about. For all we know, it could just take her to some uh people that could be just like the highwaymen traffickers that were after us, or yada yada yada. And after a lot of heckling about that, Nora's like, yeah, sure, okay, and Bronwyn passes out, and then they decide, to go head to a hospital, but then they end up going to a restaurant that kind of serves you whatever you want without having a menu, even if you don't pay them. And this is where it gets weird because it starts to feel like you're right in the middle. It starts to feel like a fever dream, like a fever dream where you take too much night NyQuil. You know what I'm saying? I was literally reading that one chapter, looking at pictures, and I was like, I'm gonna have nightmare about this. Because like after they're done eating their food, and then they start going up down the hall where it's like, oh, you're so tired, you should go to bed, and it's like, yeah, we should go to bed. And see, the scariest part about this is it eerily reminds me of when Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief went to like this hotel, and they ended up, just screwing around playing video games after eating, what was it, Lotus? I don't know. It was like they were in Vegas. They were supposed to be doing this mission to get the Zeus's lightning back to him. You, if anyone that read Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's kind of like a similar situation, but the creepiness is kicked up a notch because it involves a couple of creepy girls in a hallway staring at floorboards, and they're talking about like Frankie's dolls, and I don't know who Frankie is. I thought one of the girls was Frankie, but then when they walk past her, the girls are like, run. And I'm like, way ahead, yeah. And then they go over to another room where, they were singing Happy Birthday. No, they weren't singing Happy Birthday. They were speaking in Latin towards each other. And then the guy just randomly slammed on the wall next to him and said, keep it quiet down there, like really loudly suddenly. And then they moved into another room, and then there's this guy who's like pouring, a wine into a glass and drinking it, and then pouring more wine into a glass and drinking it, and he's singing Happy Birthday. And, in this really creepy voice, like the kind of thing you only imagine from a horror video game that you get on Steam. and I've been watching, people play Steam video games, creepy Steam video games for a while. I never thought I'd ever feel creeped out reading a book. Ransom Riggs, have you actually been watching Markiplier and Jacksepticeye lately? Because I have so many questions, dude. So many questions. Or did you have a fever dream recently and you just put this all together? Because that raises more questions and less answers. Either way, man, I applaud you for disturbing me this much because that terrified the hell out of me. But then I think the clown said something really creepy that just I think I blacked out when I read it because I don't remember it right now, and I don't want to look it up because that scared the shit out of me, guys. If you want to remember it, go ahead and look it up, but I'm not looking it up. It scared the crap out of me. Oh my god. Wait, I think he said I just want some sleep or get me out of here. I don't know. And it's like 4 in the morning right now, and this is already reaching 20 minutes, but gotta keep filming and telling you guys how I feel about it. So they finally reach Frankie, who's a psychotic little girl, but considering she's in a loop, she's probably a psychotic older little girl. And she likes dolls. And it instantly reminds me of a Criminal Minds episode, guys! This whole chapter was a Criminal Minds episode. But, yeah, she's kind of like, you, what do you do? My name is Jacob, I'm from Florida. Boring! You, what do you do? I'm Bronwyn, and I have strong strength, and my brother is boring! You, what do you do? I'm Emma Bloom, and I light fire from my hands. Boring! You, what do you do? I'm Enoch, and I can I'm sorry, I'm getting flustered myself. This, Bronwyn character, not Bronwyn character, Frankie. Bronwyn's a peach, though. Frankie. Anyway, she narrows down on Enoch because she likes him for whatever reason, turns him into a doll, agrees to sell off the other kids to other people that want to have him in their loops slash territories. And let's just say they're none too pleased about that. So, but they kind of get an amiable amount of even respect from the people that want to buy them. But once they say that they got an uncontacted peculiar like Nor, well, that just kind of screws things up for them. Apparently, that's considered kidnapping. Yeah. So they end up going to Leo, who's apparently this mob boss of the East Coast for Peculiars, even if you know it or not. And he pretty much kind of does this shakedown on all of them. He even punches Millard. No one punches Millard, okay? And basically, Jacob tells him enough, but they figure it out all on their own. And then Miss Peregrine goes and saves them. Apparently, Enoch, when that psycho chick Frankie lost telekinetic control on the kids. She lost telekinetic control over Enoch, and Enoch booked it out of Dodge and called Miss Peregrine, letting them know where they were. And Miss Peregrine went to pick him up, brought him over to Devil's Acre, which is a place where a bunch of, peculiars are staying at for the time being. It's a shithole, but it's their shithole, and they're making it theirs. And let's just say that Millard, Enoch, Emma, Bronwyn, and Jacob. Well, let's just say everyone's grounded. Everyone. And Jacob's like, well, we gotta go save Nor, guys. We gotta save Nor. And everyone's like, fuck you. We're going to go do our chores until Miss Peregrine likes us again. And then they go off. And Jacob goes off, and he goes and contacts... he goes back home, contacts H. H tells him to, live his life, which, of course, Jacob doesn't. And he goes back to Devil's Acre, and he runs into Sharon. And Sharon, being the most, gray moral characters I know, which is why I love him. Besides Millard, who's, intelligent and funny, and Enoch, who's willing to say things that I am thinking, thank you. But, also Enoch is just hilarious. I'm kind of starting to like him now. But, anyway, but Sharon, pretty much just, agrees with, Jacob. Yeah, those Embryons, they're a bunch of, Donald Trumps, aren't they? Maybe I'll get a like for that one. But, yeah, Sharon doesn't like, all the Embryons because they're, not doing things really well so far. But he decides to help Jacob out in exchange for going to a secret meeting where they get to talk. I don't know what they could talk about. Maybe we'll find out in the next book. Anyway, Jacob heads back to New York, and he runs up to H's apartment, where he finds that, unfortunately, Nora's unconscious, but she's alive. H is dying, and let's just go ahead and say that apparently the reason why Nora has all these undercover people that aren't highwaymen or peculiar mob bosses trying to get them to want to join their loop is because she's a part of this prophecy. She's one of the 7, and she's supposed to undo something. I don't know. I'm as confused as you are. Don't judge me. Maybe the second book. The second book. What am I talking about? 5th book? It doesn't even. It feels like a whole new series. But I love it. I like it. And H dies. And H, by the way, I gotta mention this, has a pet Hologast named Horatio. And he made a promise to Horatio. Well, that involved Horatio eating his eyeballs before he died. And apparently that was enough for Horatio to turn into a white. Yeah. I could have lived my entire life without reading that. So after that, they get to, and when Horatio finally starts transforming enough to start developing speech, he gives them directions to the next location and disappears. And Jacob and Noor, or is it Noor? 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 I don't know! And they decide to go looking for V, which apparently was not Jacob, Abe Portman's uh, assistant. So yeah. Anyway, this is hitting a 30-minute mark, but I will say this: maybe tomorrow I will talk. I've already concluded on talking about this entire book. I will talk about my thoughts and feelings on it tomorrow. It's getting late. Keep reading, folks. And I'm goodbye.